The next family we'll meet are Rebecca and Mohammed and their baby Amira. Now 20 months old, she is one of triplets who were born very early at 24 weeks gestation. Sadly, her two siblings died. The first baby, a little girl called Munira, passed away the day she was born.
At the time, I didn't have the shock of I lost a baby more than after Munira has literally buried. After I buried her, it was the most horrific time for me because it was just a new experience for me to bury my own before I die myself. You know what I mean?
I didn't really deal with it at that time, but because I had Amira and Zidane to concentrate on, they kept me going. It was only a couple of weeks afterwards that I started to cry for Munira, really. Obviously I cried on the day, but I kept her overnight, and for that night she was all that was in my mind.
We began filming with the family 4 days after Rebecca had given birth to the triplets and Munira had died.
I never actually saw her alive, but she was beautiful. She was absolutely beautiful. And they let me keep her all night. And then the next day they took her. They gave me they were so good, they gave me a memory box of all the little clothing that they put on her and the little nappies, and she was lovely. She was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It was the best and worst day of my life. Never thought I'd have a child and lose it on the same day. Never.
The other two triplets, Amira and Zidane, were stabilised quite well, and then they were brought over here. Later on that day I was meeting Rebecca for the first time when she'd been through, in one very short period of time, going from being pregnant to having delivered 3 babies, having lost one and having moved 2 babies. Not very far away, 10 miles away up the road, but still a complete nightmare in terms of what had happened to her.
4 weeks later, Amira and Zidane, the surviving triplets, were still in intensive care and Amira had had surgery.
Are you gorgeous? Got your eyes open?
Rebecca knew that coping with all this had affected her ability to grieve for Munira.
At the moment, I haven't really dealt with anything because I haven't got time to grieve. I've got these two, these need me, these are fighting for their life. When these two, I know these two are all right and they don't need my full attention, then that door can be reopened again. Probably when I get home, I think it will hit me when I've got 2 children, not 3. But I think my mind's just shut it off at the moment. Nothing that I've consciously done. It's just, that's just what's happened.
After another 2 weeks, Amira was progressing well, but Zidane was suffering from an infection and was back on a ventilator.
One of the biggest problems we have with premature babies, and it's more serious or more likely the more immature the baby, is infection. Premature babies have unbelievably thin skin, which produces very, very little barrier to getting infection in. And then unfortunately what we also have to do to premature babies an awful lot is put catheters in, cannulas in, things going through the skin into their bloodstream, thereby providing little portals for infection to get in. It makes babies unbelievably vulnerable. And of course, if a bug does get into the bloodstream, the baby's defences are minimal, and that makes it much more likely the baby goes from being fine to an overwhelming infection in no time at all.
At the end of the day, there's nothing you can do to control the situation. This is how it is, and that's it. You know, nothing that you do can make anything happen any quicker for them. You just have to deal with it one day at a time, or however you deal with it.
Sadly, Zidane never made it home. His condition worsened, and after a 14-week struggle, he passed away. It was important to Mohammed and Rebecca to observe Muslim traditions after the death. Looking back, Mohammed appreciates the support of hospital staff.
With Zidane, for me, it was shocking news, even though we was sort of expecting it, but not really. So it was for me, I want to bury him because I don't want to keep suffering by seeing my dead boy lying in front of me. And in the hospital really was very understanding. I really appreciate it from an Egyptian living in UK, and people don't understand some of the culture or religious point of view. They was very understanding.
Grief is absolutely individual and very unique, and I think there's no blueprint for grieving. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. People will do the best that they can in the circumstances that they find themselves in, but having support to guide them through that time can be crucial.
6 weeks after Zidane's death, baby Amira had been discharged from hospital and was doing well at home. But Rebecca still had many unanswered questions about Zidane. Consultant Alan Gibson often makes home visits to families who are bereaved.
And I remember you when you were knee-high to a grasshopper.
She really were knee-high to a grasshopper. Weren't far off, were you?
Look at that, kiddo. How you've changed.
Rebecca showed Alan memory boxes with photographs of Munira and Zidane and things they wore during their time in hospital. She wanted to know if he could help her understand more about what caused Zidane's death.
The infection undoubtedly was the primary reason for that. The fact that he didn't respond terribly well to everything that was being done appropriately, and the fact that he collapsed in such a major way, just makes me wonder. Again, I can't prove it because you can't go back in time, but there had been very significant bouts of problems before which had left residual damage, making it much more difficult for him to respond.
I think up until that point, for selfish reasons, I'd wanted to keep him there, you know, and I would have looked after him. Even now, you know, I would take him how he were, and then in the end, just I couldn't let him suffer. I couldn't do it to him anymore, and you know, he did it for me. He did it for me. I didn't, because we'd already decided on that Sunday. I'd already said on the Saturday we were going to let him go anyway.
Yeah.
On the Sunday. And he did it for me. He took that decision out of my hand, which I'm very grateful to him for.
He's talked about being selfish, wanting him to keep going. There's nothing selfish about it at all. I mean, that's why you have children. And then as a parent, you can't let them go. You know, it's nothing selfish about that. That's why you had them in the first place. You're trying to protect your child, look after them. Letting a child go is the most awful thing imaginable. There's nothing selfish about wanting to keep them.
I think people think that because you're only 14 weeks old, you haven't got that same love because you've not had him long enough, but that's not the case. When you become a parent, the minute you give birth to that child, even as a father as well, you know, but the minute you get that child in your life, it's as though a button gets turned on in your head, and you'd die for that baby. I'd give anything to have him back. If somebody said to me, "You've got to give your life up, but Zidane will be all right," I'd do it because it's my son. And people think that you're all right, and you're not all right. And I think as a mother as well, I gave birth to 3 children, and I know that, and my body knows that. But where are they? I haven't got them. And I feel awful sometimes for thinking that I want my babies. I want 3. And you know, some people can't have any, and I know that, but that doesn't mean that I can't feel what I feel, and I want them. I want 3, and I feel angry that I haven't. Very angry because I haven't. Not at anybody or anything in particular, just angry.
Because no one else has been through what you've been through, no one can quite understand it in the way that you do. And sometimes you're made to feel as if, which says, as if you've been a bit strange about it. You know, why am I being sad when I've got 1? Well, because you've actually lost 2. You know, being angry, yeah, why not? Because life has suddenly, it's not gone normally. You've lost, well, somebody once described it to me as a loss of normality. everything that should have been happening is no longer happening, and your life just loses everything.
It does.
And it's very unfair, and it's very unjust, and it's actually far, far worse than you can ever believe unless it's happened to you.
When people think about the emotions that parents may experience following the death of a baby, I suppose everyone thinks of intense sadness, but of course very powerful emotions like anger and jealousy can also come to the surface. Emotions that may be completely alien to you before, but actually feeling very angry. Sometimes anger that is at nothing and to no one, directed at no one, but actually just a huge feeling of anger and injustice that this has happened. And also sometimes feelings of jealousy when you look at a world out there and everyone else is carrying on their life as if nothing's happened and your world has just been turned upside down, and the injustice of that is huge.
Over a year later, Rebecca and Mohammed are finding that Amira is helping them through their loss.
Looking at Amira now and then looking back 20 months ago, I don't think we expected to see her like she is, because she has been through so much. When you've gone through what we went through, with the other two, you're looking at a miracle every day. Don't get me wrong, I would love my children to be sat playing with me and playing with Amira, but we have to focus on Amira. That's something that we'll never forget and we'll probably never get over, but we've got a child that we have to concentrate on. Grieving for the other two and being sad all the time because of what we haven't got, we have to sit and be grateful for what we have got, which is a lot more than a lot of families that we met in that hospital.
Yeah.